Right, so here I am now, and I've finished my 4 rounds of straight single crochet. Okay, so what you can see is that I've got a little kind of cup shape going on here. Before we carry on now, I wanted to talk to you about the inside versus the outside. So what you might find is that when you're working, your work starts to curve in this direction. And that means that the outside is on the inside, in fact, and this is the inside. But this can often happen when you're just when you're crocheting, because the work starts to curve, and yeah, it can end up the wrong way around. So how can you tell? Well, this side here is the wrong side. You should just have a really close look. So what you can see is these are little bars that go across the stitches. If you can see it, it makes a line. I might just zoom in a little bit more, so that you can see this line that goes across your stitches. So this is the inside. If I just flip it, so I'm just going to push it so that the inside is on the inside, and have a look at the outside, what you can see here is that you've got these V shapes. So these are what you should see on the outside. So this is the outside, this is the inside, with these lines that go across your stitches like that. Okay, so if you find that your work is this way round, where the inside, the outside is on the inside, all you need to do is just flip it the right way around, so that you're working on the outside, and then you know your inside is inside, your outside is outside. Let's just zoom out a little bit more. Okay, right, so what we need to do now is we need to start our decreases. But before we start doing that, what we want to do is finish off this starting end. So while we still have all this space that we can get access to it, we're just going to work it off and finish it off. So what I need is my needle, so my yarn needle, and I'm going to just make sure that this end is nice and secure. So normally, if you've done your magic ring, you've crocheted over the 2 ends of your magic ring and everything is nice and secure. But just to make sure, what you want to do is actually to finish off that end. So I'm going to put it over my yarn needle like that and pinch it so that I can push it through the eye of my needle like that. Okay. And now all I'm going to do, I'm going to come up a bit closer. I'm going to run this yarn through the back of some stitches. So this is the inside now. So I'm just going to push it, and my stitches are quite tight, so it's a little bit tough. I'm just going to go underneath a couple, and then I am actually going to make a knot. So that's the loop where I just went through. I'm going to put my yarn through that loop, and I'm actually going to make a knot. Because this is on the inside of a 3D object, it doesn't matter if you make a knot, but I'm not going to cut it there. I am just going to carry on and work my tail underneath some of these stitches. So I'm going to go in one direction, and then I'm going to come back in the other direction under some other stitches, so that everything is nice and secure. Okay, so no chance that my magic ring is going to come undone here. Okay, so just going backwards and forwards underneath some stitches, and that's it. I don't need to do any more than that. I don't need to cut my end because it's going to be on the inside. Nobody's going to see it. It's just going to be part of the stuffing on the inside. So just before we start our decrease rounds, what I wanted to let you know is how to actually count the rounds that you've done. So let's say that you just put your work down and you picked it up, and actually you weren't sure what round you were on to know what should happen next. What you'll see is that actually there are some lines in your crochet, and each one of these lines is a row. So you can actually go back and see, look, this is where I started here. This was my magic ring. Then this round here is where I increased in every stitch. So then this round here was where I did 1 single crochet and then increase. And basically I should have 10 rounds in total. So this is the 1, this is increase in every stitch, this is 1 stitch in between, 2 stitches in between, 3 stitches in between, 4 stitches in between, and then I've got 4 plain rounds of single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 10 rounds in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Okay, if you are using a thread marker like this, then you can also use your little marks here to count the rows. I'm not going to do that because I didn't actually start in the first row, because I used that stitch marker for my first round. So for me it's 1 off, so it doesn't help me so much. Okay, so let's go for the next round then. So if you remember, we finished our increases with 4 stitches in between. So what we're going to do now is 4 stitches and then a decrease. Okay, so 4 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. And now I've got my decrease stitch. So what I need to do is I need to make these 2 stitches into 1. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pick up the front of these 2 loops. So this is called an invisible decrease. There are other ways of doing decreases, but this is the best one to use for amigurumi because it really doesn't show on the outside, and you should not get any gaps in your work if you use the invisible decrease. So I basically always use that when I'm doing decreases for amigurumi. So how does it work? So you put your hook under the front loop of that first stitch. So if you look at your stitches, you've got these 2 bars here, these 2 parts of the V, and you're only going to put your hook under the front loop of the first one. And then without doing anything with the yarn, you're going to put your hook directly under the front loop of the next stitch. So then I've got these 2 loops on my hook. It's a little bit tight and a little bit awkward, but that's how it should be. So now I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to bring the yarn through those 2 loops. Sometimes I need to give it a bit of a wiggle to get through. That's okay. And then I'm going to yarn over and bring it through the final 2 loops. Okay, so that's my invisible decrease. Basically picking up the 2 front loops of the 2 stitches and pulling them together with a single crochet. So now I've got 4 stitches and then my next decrease. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're at the decrease again. So pick up the front loop of the first stitch, front loop of the second stitch, yarn over and through those 2 loops, wiggle if it's a little bit tight, yarn over and through those 2 loops. And I like to pull that a little bit tight because sometimes I find that that second yarn over can be a bit loose. So now 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and now I decrease again. So under the front loop, yarn over through those 2 loops, yarn over through 2, pull it a bit tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, decrease, and keep going. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hooray, I've got 2 stitches left for my decrease, so hopefully that's correct. Normally you should count the stitches. I would advise that when you're starting out, count the stitches to make sure that you've got the right number. Okay, so now very much like my increases, my next round is going to have 3 stitches and then a decrease, and then after that I'm going to do 2 stitches and a decrease, 1 stitch and a decrease, and then finally my last round is going to be all decreases. Okay, so this round is 3 and then a decrease. So let's go. So 1, 2, 3, decrease, I'm just going to go a little bit faster because I want to get to the end. 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, oops, 3, it got away from me there, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, nearly there, probably a couple more, 1, 2, 3, decrease, and then 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, and my last decrease. Okay, there we go. So now you can see that my work is beginning to kind of shape around. I'm not going to stuff mine just yet. You could, if you wanted to, start to stuff and then finish stuffing a bit later. I'm going to do, I think, probably 2 more rounds actually, and then do my stuffing. I can always put more stuffing in right at the end if I need to. Okay, so now I'm going to do 2 single crochets and then a decrease. So 2 and oops, lost my loops. 2 and decrease, 2, so 1, 2 and decrease, 1, 2 and decrease, 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2 and decrease, 1 and 2, and my last decrease. Okay, so as this opening gets smaller and smaller, you can see that it's a little bit baggy, but you can see that my round shape is beginning to come. I am actually going to stuff it now. I know I said I was going to go for 1 more round, but I think I'm going to do my stuffing. So I'm just going to pull my stuffing into smaller bits and then just shove it in the gap. And that you always need more stuffing than you think. I always seem to have stuffing and then add a bit more, but basically you just need to stuff it until it's as stuffed as you want. You can go more or less. What you don't want is for the stuffing to show through the gaps. That's the thing. So I'm not going to completely stuff it. I just want to get some in to give it the right kind of shape, and then I'm going to carry on with my next round. So my next round is 1 single crochet and then a decrease. So here we're going 1, oops, completely lost that. Start that again. So 1 and a decrease. 1 single crochet, decrease, 1 single crochet, decrease, 1 single crochet, decrease, and the rounds get quicker because I've got fewer stitches now. So 1 single crochet, decrease, 1 single crochet, decrease, And then we've got our last ones. So 1 single crochet and then decrease. Okay, so if you want, you could now add a little bit more stuffing just before you finish the final round. I might just do that. So just pop a bit more in, just make it a bit fatter. Sometimes I even add some right at the end. Okay, so our last round then is 6 decreases. So this can be a little bit tricky because it's a bit fiddly. Okay, so here we go, because you've got a small gap now. So just be careful how you're holding it and just do the best that you can. So 6 decreases. So 1, 2, 3, 8. I always have to be careful which loops I'm going into. 4. So make sure I don't go into the same stitch twice. That can happen. 5. And then the last one. I've got the last 2 loops just right there. Okay, so that's my last decrease. Okay, so I could now, even if I wanted to add a bit more stuffing, I could just often I use the end of my crochet hook to just stuff a little bit more in that tiny little gap. So you can just still stuff a bit more in if you want. Let's just get that little bit in. Okie doke. So we've still got a hole here and we need to finish off that hole. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to cut our yarn. So leaving a nice tail, just cut it, and you're going to just pull it so that you pull that loop through there. If you're using a thread marker, now is the time to get rid of it. So you can just pull it out. It shouldn't be attached anywhere. It should just come straight out. But we need to do something with this little hole that's left here. So what you're going to do, you're going to put your yarn onto your yarn needle. So put your loop of yarn over the needle, pinch it up next to the needle so that you've got a loop, and you can push that through the eye of your needle. And now what we're going to do, we're going to actually, oops, I'm just going to come across a little bit because the sun is shining. We're going to actually pick up the outside loops of these stitches and then pull them together. So remember that you've got 6, okay? So here, under that front loop, so just like when you were doing the decrease, we're going to pick up the front loops. So I'm going to put my first stitch in there. So 1, 2, and here 3, 4, 5. So only picking up the outside loops, and then you will have a nice finish. It will all kind of draw together. 6, and then what I can do is pull it up like a drawstring. So pull it all together like that, and you should end up with a nice neat finish. So you can give it a good pull like that. So now what I like to do is I do like to make a tiny knot, and then I like to pull my knot through into the inside. Okay, so I just made a stitch there and left that loop, and I'm going to put my yarn through that loop to actually make a knot. Okay, so there, and then I may just push my yarn needle underneath the loop of some of the stitches again to just hold it in place like that. So here, because this is the outside, I do want to be a bit careful so that these stitches are not showing. So just like that. So I'm just pushing it underneath some of these loops to just hold it in place. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to push my needle all the way through and out the other side. So it doesn't really matter where you come out, just anywhere will do. So sometimes it can be a bit tricky with the stuffing. So just push my needle all the way so that I'm just pulling it out the other side. Okay, and now to finish off, you want that tail to kind of ping back inside your work. So what you're going to do, you're going to put your scissors right up next to your work. You're going to pull that end a little bit and then cut it, and then just give it a little squish, and the end will actually disappear into your work. Okay? Then what you're going to do is you're just going to give it a little roll and a little bit of a squish to make sure that there's nothing that's uneven, and then you are done. Now what I would say is that the top where you had your increases is always a little bit neater looking than the bottom where you have your decreases. So if this was a head, for example, of a toy, probably I would put the neck of the toy here, and I would put this as the top of the head, because it just looks a little bit neater. There's no real way to make that any particularly neater than that. I mean, usually you have a top and a bottom of a toy, and usually there's a way to hide it, but it's fine still if this is the way it works. Okay, so that's how to make a crochet ball. It's great practice if you are starting out with amigurumi to just try and make a ball just like this before you go into your fully fledged toy making. If you can get to grips with how the increases work and the decreases, then you're all set for going off and making a very nice toy. Okay, if you like my videos, then I would love a like and subscribe. That would be great. Thank you.